podium is yours.
Thank you so very much. First and foremost, I do want to thank you very much, Ram, for being the convener and for organizing this incredible event here at the Vatican. Also want to recognize our Chancellor of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, Monsignor Marcelo Sanchez Sorondo, for your leadership here at the Vatican. And obviously the President of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, Professor Dr. Von Braun. Good evening to each and every one of you, and I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to share a few words. And as you have heard from so many brilliant speakers, both today as well as yesterday, addressing climate change is an issue of human rights, civil rights, and economic justice. The son of the great American civil rights icon, Martin Luther King III, put it this way: the injustice of climate change and the pollution that fuels it are among the century's most debilitating engines of inequality. We know that pollution from freeways, from power plants, from refineries, from ports, and other sources disproportionately harm the poor and people of color. Despite our best efforts, California is no exception. According to the American Lung Association, California is home to 7 of the 10 most polluted cities in the United States for air quality. 8 in 10 Californians currently live in areas with unhealthy air. But the worst pollution by far is in our poorest communities. Every year, tens of thousands of residents are hospitalized for asthma. Many of them are children. In fact, asthma is the leading cause of absenteeism in our California public schools. And for many families, especially for the single mother, the housekeeper, the farm worker, struggling just to get by, this can mean the difference between paying the rent and being homeless because you cannot actually pay the rent to put that roof over your child's head. And despite a decades-long commitment to promoting energy efficiency, clean energy, and environmental protection, California has only recently begun to actively address these persistent racial and socioeconomic disparities. However, and let me underscore and emphasize the following. In just a few short years, we've made equity the driving principle in our response to air pollution and climate change. We have much work to do, no doubt, but I believe California is a model for governments around the world. We have a proven roadmap to address climate change and improve public health that is fundamentally just and also strengthens our economy. Today, I want to discuss our efforts to democratize our climate policies so that all individuals, no matter who they are, no matter the hue of their skin, or their creed, or their zip code, or their tax bracket, can access and benefit from the latest and the greatest clean energy technologies and live in healthy, resilient communities. Because we know it's not enough if only wealthy communities can afford to buy an electric vehicle or put solar panels on their roof. If we fail, we run the real risk of boutique environmentalism, giving access to only those who have the financial wherewithal to the cleanest and the greatest and the latest clean energy technologies, whether it's energy efficiency, whether it's storage, whether it's distributed generation, rooftop solar, whether it is an electric vehicle. And we will never meet our long-term goals that way. We have to act with a sense of purpose and lead with intentionality. And I want to share why I believe cap and trade is an important part of this effort. Now, I understand the deep skepticism of market-based mechanisms articulated by Pope Francis in his landmark encyclical Laudato Si. So do many of my colleagues like me who grew up in the industrial dumping grounds and the frontline communities that bear the greatest burdens of air pollution and climate change. We know that market forces alone will not correct these inequities. That's why I've made it my personal mission in my decade in the legislature and as the leader of the California State Senate to ensure that we go well above and beyond cap and trade. Today, we're harnessing the market to help us reach our goals. We're not relying on market mechanisms alone. California now treats cap and trade as a very important insurance policy, a complement to the host of direct measures we have taken in recent years. It provides the necessary market signals to attract the necessary capital, the investment, to drive new technologies to help us meet our ambitious climate goals. But we're also reducing toxic air pollution at the source and investing billions of dollars paid by polluters to improve the quality of life in our most impacted communities. Now, I want to take a step back to provide an overview on how we got there, because it is part of the process decades in the making. Now, under both Democratic and Republican administrations, going back to Ronald Reagan's time as governor in the 60s and 70s, California has consistently pushed for cleaner air, water, and energy, more efficient buildings and vehicles, and strong protections for our cherished natural landscapes and resources. These efforts were driven by necessity, not by ideology. Californians were literally sick of breathing dirty air and drinking dirty water, and the consequences were holding back our economy. By following the science and taking common sense steps to protect consumers, wildlife, and our air and water, we have turned some of the biggest environmental challenges into amazing economic opportunities. We've implemented the most ambitious clean air policies in America, including tailpipe emission standards that have become the national model. We led the charge to remove lead from gasoline. We set our own air quality standards 15 years ago, 15 years before the Federal Clean Air Act. And ever since, we've gone beyond the federal law to pursue even stronger pollution limits. Our decades-long commitment to energy efficiency, which began with our governor here today, Jerry Brown, during his first stint as governor in the 1970s, has not only kept our state's electricity consumption flat, as demonstrated in the presentation by Professor Kamen, but it has, in fact, kept the consumption flat despite a steadily rising population. California approximately now has 40 million individuals. And you can see our consumption, due to our reduction in energy load, has actually have kept that flat consistently. It's keeping California's energy spending among the lowest in the nation. And over decades, these efforts have helped save California households billions of dollars in avoided fuel and energy costs. In fact, despite all the doomsday rhetoric we've heard from critics over the years, Californians spend less on energy than the vast majority of Americans. Since we passed the landmark Global Warming Solutions Act, AB 32, in 2006, our per capita GDP has grown by nearly twice the national average, and we're now the least carbon-intensive economy in the world. This success has been a critical contribution to the global policy discussion on climate change. We are showing that it is in fact possible for one of the world's great economies to decouple, delink economic growth from greenhouse gas emissions. We're defying the conventional wisdom that suffocating air pollution and other environmental harms are the inevitable cost of doing business. This misperception, the misperception that environmental health and economic growth are mutually exclusive, is a myth. In fact, the opposite has been proven in California. In contrary to the fake news and the alternative facts spewing out of Washington, California's economy is thriving in large part because of our commitment to climate action. We reduce the pollution that is so harmful to our children, to our families, and planet, while turning clean energy into a pillar of our economy that now employs over 500,000 Californians. In fact, there are 10 times more jobs in the clean energy space in California than there are coal mining jobs in the entire United States of America. A testament to the vitality of this emerging economic sector and to California's foresight as an early climate leader. And we have much to thank our governor today since the 1970s. However, despite these very important successes, we only recently begun to seriously address the racial and socioeconomic inequities in our energy and climate policies. So, what exactly have we done to right those wrongs? I want to offer a new guiding principle for climate policy. First, we developed an instrument, an objective tool to identify the areas most impacted by poor air quality, poverty, heat stress, and a wide range of other factors. We had to target the worst problems so we could send resources where they're needed most. Then we mandated a floor, a baseline of at least 25% of the revenue, the auction revenue dollars from cap and trade, to be invested to benefit specifically those targeted communities, the marginalized, the most vulnerable. These investments established under Senate Bill 535, my law, back in 2012, and I want to thank the governor very much for his wisdom for signing this measure, were critical first steps. We recognize, the governor, myself, and other leaders in California, as Pope Francis, the Holy See, rightfully points out, that those impacted by air pollution and the consequences of climate change benefit least from market-based programs, exclusively like cap and trade. Today, we're taking billions of dollars from polluters to put solar panels on rooftops in poor neighborhoods. We're using that money to take dirty diesel engines off the road and replace them with electric vehicles. We're improving our energy efficiency and weatherizing homes so our families can save more of their hard-earned money and live more comfortably. We're planting trees to break up the concrete jungles and replace them with urban forests so our kids can have safe and healthy places to play outside. We're building public transportation and affordable housing. And in fact, just this year alone, with the leadership of Governor Jerry Brown, my colleagues, my friends in the California State Assembly, and our senators in the California State Assembly, we made the single largest investment in clean air in California history, using nearly $1 billion by cap and trade to replace dirty diesel engines in heavy trucks and tractors, expand access to electric vehicles for working families, and increase transit options. Transportation, my friends in California, is the single largest contributor to both toxic air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. So we're using funds paid by polluters through cap and trade to directly attack this problem at the source. California's aggressive clean energy policies are also directly benefiting disadvantaged communities. Aside from providing cleaner energy from solar and wind and other renewable sources, we're also creating tens of thousands of real jobs that you can quantify and verify, that you can measure. Research shows these employment benefits are concentrated in regions of the state with the highest levels of poverty, unemployment, and environmental impacts. And many of the jobs that already have been created are middle-class jobs, high-wage jobs that don't require a college education, making them much more accessible to those in the lowest economic strata. Economists at the University of California at Berkeley estimates that meeting our current clean energy targets of 50% by the year 2030 will create hundreds of thousands of direct jobs from the construction of new renewable generation. Altogether, the report estimated a total of nearly 1 million jobs by the year 2030. The scale of economic investment can lift entire communities above the poverty line. It can give parents a chance to make lives better for their children, all while delivering cleaner air. Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. And I'm pushing to take this goal even further, with my measure to put California on a pathway to 100% clean energy by the year 2045. Now, let me underscore and emphasize the following. California must not slow down. We must be relentless and build on our progress. The work that the governor and I have done together, along with our speaker, Anthony Rendon, working in concert with each other, have converted, again, these amazing economic, or I should say, environmental challenges into incredible economic opportunities. By democratizing our climate policies and making sure the benefits of clean energy reach every economic strata and every corner of our state, we're expanding the constituency for clean energy and helping to spur greater market demand. We're putting people first, especially those who are most impacted by air pollution and economic hardship. Equity and environmental justice are now hardwired into all of our climate policies in a very unprecedented way. By doing so, I believe we've fundamentally altered the political landscape of environmentalism in America. It's no longer just a pastime of the privileged. We're building a movement from the ground up. As I like to say, we're teaching electric vehicles how to speak Spanish. Now, we have a long way to go, no doubt. But California's progress in less than a decade should serve as a model to governments around the world that are mobilizing in response to the existential threats of climate change. This is no longer a question of science. I've incredibly been honored to just share this room with all of you for the past day and a half, close to 2 days now. To have Nobel Prize winners here, to have those who have been knighted by Queen Elizabeth here, to have incredible academic scientists from Europe, from Asia, as well from America. I feel that my IQ level has increased a few points just by being in the same room with all of you. But let me underscore and emphasize the following. This is no longer a question of science. We have all the empirical evidence that we need to act. This is a question of leadership. Do we have the courage and conviction to change our ways, to act as faithful stewards of God's creation? America may not have the leadership at this time, but I submit to each and every one of you, California does. More than ever, it's vital that California remains a beacon of hope and opportunity in a very uncertain world. And we're not going to allow one election to reverse generations of progress at the height of our historic diversity, our scientific advancement, our economic output, and our sense of global responsibility. I want to thank you very much for the honor that you have bestowed on me to share a few words with each and every one of you, and I look forward to a very robust discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.